Hey, everyone, and welcome back to Crush Talk, the podcast where your crushes turn into conversations. And today we're diving into a story I'm sure you've all seen in the headlines lately.
Yeah.
It's the CNN defamation case.
It's a big one.
Yeah, it's not just another, news cycle blip.
Right.
This one really goes deep.
Mm-hmm.
It touches on media integrity and public trust.
Absolutely.
The whole shebang.
Yeah, the whole thing.
So, are you ready to unpack all this with us?
Let's get into it.
All right, so what's really interesting about this case, I think, is the human element.
Okay.
We're talking about Zachary Young.
Right.
He's a Navy veteran who was wrongly accused by CNN of basically profiting illegally during the U.S. military withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Yeah, and that's a big deal to be accused of something like that by such a big name.
Huge, right? And here's where it gets even crazier.
Okay.
Young actually tried to contact CNN before the story even aired.
Wow.
I know, right? He wanted to give them the correct information.
Oh, so he reached out preemptively to clear things up.
Yeah, to prevent any misunderstandings or misinformation.
And they still
ran the story.
Oh.
Like, imagine that.
That's
Trying to be proactive and responsible and still getting slammed.
by a major news network.
I know, right?
That's wild.
So it really raises questions about their journalistic process, right?
Sure. It makes you wonder about their fact-checking and editorial standards.
Yeah, you'd think that a basic thing in journalism would be to ensure the information is accurate.
Especially when it's accusations that could really damage someone's reputation.
Right, exactly. And legally speaking, this is really significant, this preemptive contact from Young.
Oh, absolutely.
So basically, to win a defamation case, you have to prove that the published information was false.
Right.
It caused harm, and that the publisher acted negligently or with reckless disregard for the truth.
Okay.
So in this case, Young's attempt to reach out beforehand suggests that CNN might have had reason to doubt the accuracy of their information.
But they went ahead anyway.
Yeah. And to make matters worse.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Some internal CNN communications were revealed during the trial.
Oh.
Yeah. And they didn't exactly paint a flattering picture.
Really? What did they say?
There were texts showing a blatant disregard for journalistic standards.
Oh, no.
I know, right? Some reporters even expressed a desire to, nail Young.
So they were going after him.
Yeah, and this definitely undermined their defense in court.
Well, yeah, if they were already biased against him,
Exactly.
then that really calls into question their motives.
Right, so think about it.
Yeah,
These texts basically reveal a culture where getting the gotcha story was more important than,
The truth.
yeah.
Wow.
So this kind of internal culture can have a ripple effect, right?
Totally. It contributes to the declining public trust in media.
Exactly.
Because if they're not even trying to be objective,
Yeah.
then how can we trust anything they say?
And it's not just about internal practices either.
Okay.
The aftermath of this case has been pretty significant for CNN. Yeah.
Their ratings have tanked.
Yeah, they've plummeted. They've had major programming shakeups.
Like what?
Big names like Jim Acosta have been reassigned.
No way.
Yeah.
So they're shaking things up.
Yeah, big time.
But is it enough?
That's the question, right?
Are they actually addressing the core issues?
Are they just rearranging the deck chairs on a sinking ship?
Right. Because if the problem is a lack of integrity, then just moving people around isn't going to fix that.
Exactly. And some media commentators have suggested that news outlets should focus on settling these kinds of cases quickly
Interesting.
as a way to rebuild public trust.
To avoid all the negative publicity.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, it's a really interesting point. Megyn Kelly and Maureen Callahan,
Great.
they've been pretty vocal about media accountability.
Yeah, they have.
And they've actually argued that settling in these cases is often the best course of action.
Really?
Yeah, for rebuilding public trust.
But doesn't that feel like a slippery slope, though?
What do you mean?
I mean, does it actually address the root cause of the problem? Or is it just sweeping it under the rug? Avoiding real accountability?
I see what you're saying, but think of it this way.
Okay.
These drawn-out legal battles, they can actually further erode public trust.
I guess so.
It becomes less about journalistic integrity and more about a network trying to protect its image.
And their bottom line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Settling, on the other hand, can be seen as taking responsibility and a willingness to move forward.
I see your point.
Yeah.
It's like acknowledging that mistakes were made and focusing on doing better in the future.
Right.
Rather than getting bogged down in a legal fight.
Exactly.
But then again, doesn't that set a kind of dangerous precedent?
How so?
Couldn't media outlets just become more careless?
Oh, you mean knowing that they can just settle if they get caught?
Yeah, exactly.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
It's a complex issue with valid arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
Some people argue that settling allows these media organizations to buy their way out of trouble without addressing the underlying issues.
It's like a slap on the wrist, but a financial one.
Right, exactly. And we've seen similar situations in the past.
Like what?
Like when ABC settled with former President Trump over a defamation case.
Oh, right.
Those settlements can feel like a way to just silence critics and avoid a deeper reckoning with the potential harm that was caused.
That's a good point. So, okay, but circling back to the CNN case,
right.
One thing that really stood out to me was the impact this had on Zachary Young.
Yeah.
I mean, he reached out to them in good faith.
He did.
Trying to prevent the spread of misinformation.
Right.
And they basically ignored him.
That's rough.
I know. What does that say about their commitment to journalistic ethics?
It's pretty damning, you would think, that a news organization would welcome the opportunity to clarify information and ensure accuracy, especially when dealing with sensitive topics like this.
Exactly. It goes beyond just CNN, though.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so.
It speaks to a broader concern about the culture within some media organizations, where the pursuit of a sensational story can overshadow the responsibility to report accurately and fairly.
It's like they prioritize the drama over the truth.
Right, and the irony is that by prioritizing those gotcha stories over truth and accuracy, they end up further eroding public trust.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is, and that erosion of trust is a huge problem for everyone.
Absolutely.
Because when people lose faith in their sources of information, it becomes harder to have meaningful conversations
about important issues.
Exactly. It fuels division and makes it easier for misinformation to spread.
Right, because you don't know what to believe anymore.
Exactly. And it undermines the very foundation of a functioning democracy.
That's a big deal.
So if we're talking about real change in the media landscape, what would that even look like? Where do we begin to address these issues?
Well, one crucial step is greater transparency from media organizations. They need to be more open about their processes, their biases, their sources of information.
So it's about showing their work.
Exactly. Explaining how they arrive at their conclusions and being willing to acknowledge when they make mistakes.
Right. And that transparency needs to be coupled with a renewed commitment to journalistic principles.
Like?
Seeking the truth, verifying information, presenting a balanced perspective.
So basically getting back to basics.
Yeah, prioritizing accuracy over sensationalism.
And recognizing that their words have real-world consequences.
Exactly. It's about rebuilding that trust with the public.
Because without it, they're just shouting into the void.
It's true, but it's not just on the media to fix this. Is it?
I don't think so.
We, as consumers of news, we also have a responsibility.
Absolutely. We can't just passively absorb information anymore.
Right. We need to be active, engaged citizens.
Who question what we read and hear.
Seek out diverse perspectives.
And hold media outlets accountable.
Right. It's about being media literate.
Yeah.
Recognizing that not all sources of information are created equal.
We have to be discerning consumers.
Yeah, questioning the narratives that are presented to us.
And demanding better from the media we rely on.
Right.
And that's something we can all do.
Yeah.
Regardless of our political beliefs.
Or media preferences.
It's about recognizing that a healthy media ecosystem is essential for a functioning democracy.
Yes.
And that we all have a role to play in ensuring that the information we rely on is accurate, fair, and trustworthy.
I love that. It's about taking ownership, being informed, engaging in a way that elevates the conversation.
Exactly.
Speaking of elevating the conversation, what does the future hold for CNN in the wake of all of this?
That's a good question.
They've obviously taken a major hit.
They have.
In terms of public perception.
Yeah.
Can they recover?
It remains to be seen.
Or are they destined to become like a cautionary tale?
In this evolving media landscape.
Yeah.
Well, they've made some changes.
Like what?
Like reassigning hosts. Revamping their programming.
Right. But are those changes merely cosmetic?
Or are they indicative of a deeper cultural shift?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
Because if they're just rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship, they're missing the point entirely.
Exactly. And it seems like they're at a crossroads.
Yeah.
They can either continue down this path of sensationalism
and further erode public trust.
Or they can take this opportunity to genuinely reflect, reform, rebuild their credibility.
So much is riding on the decisions they make in the coming months and years.
I agree.
They have a chance to set a new standard for accountability and transparency.
They do.
But the question remains, will they seize that opportunity?
That's a question we'll all be watching closely to see answered.
Welcome back to Crush Talk, the podcast, where we turn your burning questions about current events into insightful conversations. And before the break, we were talking about the CNN defamation case and all the fallout they've experienced.
Right, the broader implications for media accountability and public trust.
Yeah, and as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to remember that this isn't just some, abstract debate happening out there. This is about real people.
Exactly.
Like Zachary Young, whose lives are directly impacted by the actions of media organizations.
It's a good reminder that news stories aren't just headlines. They have real-world consequences.
Yeah, and for all of us who rely on news and information to make sense of the world,
right,
this case raises some critical questions.
About the sources we trust.
Yeah, and the information we consume.
If we can't trust the sources we rely on for information, it really undermines our ability to engage in meaningful conversations,
right,
make informed decisions, and hold those in power accountable.
It's like the foundation of our understanding of the world becomes shaky.
Exactly.
And that's why this case is such a wake-up call.
Totally.
It highlights the need for a fundamental shift in how we approach news and information in this digital age.
Yeah, we can't just passively consume content anymore.
Right. We need to be active, engaged citizens who demand better from our media.
So how do we do that? How do we become more discerning consumers of information?
Well, for starters, we can support organizations that are committed to ethical journalism.
Okay.
There are a lot of great journalists and news outlets out there.
For sure.
Doing incredible work, often with limited resources. We can support them with our subscriptions, our donations, and by simply paying attention to their reporting.
It's about putting our money where our mouth is.
Exactly. Supporting those who are upholding journalistic standards.
And holding themselves accountable.
Right. And when we encounter information from sources we're less familiar with, we should be asking ourselves some critical questions.
Like what?
Like, who's behind this information?
Okay.
What are their motivations? Does this align with what I know about the world, or does it feel off?
So it's about cultivating a healthy skepticism.
Yeah, and not just taking things at face value.
And recognizing that we all have biases.
Wow. Oh, that's a good point. What are our own preconceived notions about certain topics? How might those biases be influencing our interpretation of the news?
Right. We need to be aware of our own biases and actively seek out information that challenges those biases.
Because it's so easy to fall into those echo chambers.
Totally, where we're only exposed to information that reinforces our existing beliefs.
And that's where the idea of seeking out diverse perspectives comes in.
Right.
We should actively engage with sources that offer different viewpoints, even if those viewpoints make us uncomfortable.
It's about expanding our understanding of the world.
And recognizing that there's rarely a simple black and white answer to complex issues.
It's about embracing nuance.
Yeah, and recognizing that truth often lies somewhere in the gray areas.
For sure.
And this brings us back to the idea of holding media outlets accountable.
Okay.
If we see something that seems inaccurate or biased, we need to call them out on it.
Wow.
Demand corrections.
Right.
Write letters to the editor. Use social media to voice your concerns.
So we can't just sit back and passively consume information.
We have a voice, and we need to use it.
To demand better from the sources we rely on.
Exactly. And it's not just about criticizing when they get things wrong.
Well, what else?
It's also about praising them when they do a good job.
Oh, yeah. Positive reinforcement can be just as powerful.
Totally. So ultimately, this is all about recognizing that a healthy media ecosystem is crucial for a functioning democracy.
It's true.
We all have a role to play in ensuring that the information we rely on is accurate.
Fair.
And trustworthy.
It's about taking ownership of our role as informed citizens.
Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together.
Well said.
So as we wrap up this deep dive here on Crush Talk, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder.
What does real change in the media landscape look like to you? What steps can WE take both individually and collectively to ensure greater accountability and rebuild trust in the news we consume? We'd love to hear your perspectives. Share your thoughts using the hashtag CrushTalkCNN, and keep the conversation going. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to Crush Talk for more deep dives into the topics that matter most to you. Until next time, keep crushing it.